choice. Her tireless efforts have positively impacted countless at-risk families and children, providing them with support and guidance that they need to thrive. Welcome, Ms. J. We are so excited to have you here.
Good morning, everyone. I can see some faces on the side, so I'm going to write off of the ones I see. Good morning. I thank you, Mackenzie and Jess and Angie and all of the ones who were vital in putting this social together. I think is very much an appropriate and much needed thing. I am honored to be able to present on such a fun topic and such a something that relates to me very well, humor and family fun. Just as a note, this curriculum comes from Me Time. It's a curriculum that has been built and rested on Dr. Laura Kaiser's back from the university, and it is a great, awesome program. I've been privileged myself to run it at least twice. Children's Choice has been a part of this program for a while in this curriculum. So this is actually one of the modules there. If you're interested in all of the Me Time program, by all means, let us know and we'll point you in the right direction. This program is typically presented to our caregivers here with children and our respite program and our foster parents and biological parents to kind of just give them a greater sense of taking care of themselves while they're trying to take care of others, securing their own mask, if you would. And it goes into a plethora of things down to nutrition, of course, this humor and family fun portion, exercise, stress reduction, and things of that nature. So the Me Time program is awesome, awesome, awesome. If you've never had an opportunity to sit through it all, definitely find it. And so that way you can sit through it and gather from it. But anyway, today, again, humor and family fun, my favorite part of it. So let's roll through. We can go ahead and hit the slide. So the first section that we're going to jump in today is talking about learning and laughter. Objectives here are to learn about the physical and emotional benefits of laughter, which surprisingly enough, they are great. The second one says to understand the role of laughter at various stages of life. So we can go on to the next one. When we think about laughter and why it's important, we don't really process it. We just do it, right? You see something funny and you go like gut busting, laughing and just getting weak and going at it. You don't really think about and necessarily like, oh, let me plan to laugh in this moment. It just kind of happens. But when it does, it's very important. So let's look at laughter and what parts and what things it does. It says it relaxes the whole body. You ever experience something and it makes you laugh and you literally feel weak, like you don't even have strength to do anything, and you just kind of get so weak with laughter, like literally, I've known people laugh to the point of them passing out, seriously. So laughter does that, right? It just relaxes and gets you all good feeling. It says it boosts your immune system, triggers the release of endorphins, protects the heart, which is very, very vital for us, burns calories. I need some of that if anybody else does. Lightens anger and lightens anger's heavy load. I like that one. And may even help you live longer. Tips, parents, caregivers, like I said, and just as a little disclosure, my husband and I have 6 children. So there's a lot of laughing and a lot of everything going on. So I love these tips and I have exercised them myself. Remember to be a role model. Don't laugh at mean jokes. Have a sense of humor. Encourage family fun time. And the most important, let yourself laugh. But let me tap on back in the beginning. You know how sometimes if anyone has young children or have been around younger children and they say something that's probably not the most appropriate, or they make a joke or that's maybe not the most appropriate for their age, but it's funny. So then what do? We try to either hold our laughter in or we turn the other way or don't allow them to see us laugh because we do not want to encourage such behavior. However, it's still funny. We can't turn that part of it on and off. So that's pretty much all that's saying. Like, just be a good role model, turn your head when you can, put a book over your face or whatever. When Billy says the joke that you were like, where did you get that from? Kids say the darndest things. But anyway, these are different reasons why laughter is important. Yasmin. So let's look at this, laughing through life. we know that there are stages of development and different stages in life that from birth to the way you leave that you go through. So babies understand laughter probably around that 3 or 4 months where you can actually hear them chuckle. So when they're newborn, of course, we see moments of them smiling. My dad used to say that the angels were visiting them in their dreams, but you see them smiling. But when you actually start to get to a certain stage around that 3 or 4 month span where you can actually hear them chuckle, you do something or someone does something silly and they laugh. So even at such a innocent and juvenile state, it is very important laughter even then in babies. They understand and are able to see, maybe not conceptualize, but still understand and see like this was funny and this causes this reaction. We know toddlers, they love to play peekaboo. Anything silly that you can do to get their attention, to make them laugh, act like you're like hitting yourself or tripping or falling or something like that. They eat it up. They love it, every bit of it. School age children, yeah. So again, tripping, falling, if you see noted here specifically that physical comedy is funny to them, even when sometimes it should not be. One time I was sitting, went to go sit down in a chair, and of course the chair rolled under me. My son, my 8-year-old, to this day, literally, this was like 4 years ago, to this day, he still talks about it and mimics it. Like, Mom, remember that time you went to sit down and boom, boom, boom. He cracks up. And again, this was 4 years later. So they definitely appreciate sometimes laughing at other people's expense, but nevertheless laughing. Teenagers, of course, telling jokes, and these day and time, jokes look like all kinds of things for them. But telling jokes and might make fun of anything abnormal. Again, maybe not always the best source of laughter, but laughter nonetheless. And then, of course, as adults, our kids, family, we adorn ourselves in certain television shows and things that we can get some good comedy. We all have different kinds of sense of humor. I am definitely more of a dry comedy kind of person, a dry humor. I appreciate like The Office and Parks and Rec and shows of that nature, Seinfeld and things like that. But either way, throughout life and throughout the stages of life, laughter is very present and it's very important. And it definitely it comes with its own dose of medicine. I have dealt with, much like everyone, a lot of loss and things like that. And back in November, my brother passed away unexpectedly. And my sisters and I were having a conversation and chatting, and we were just laughing about stuff that probably should not have been funny. And in the moment, I stopped and I said, you know what? Laughter really has taken us through a lot of things in life. Being able to use that as medicine, being able to use that as a mender of the heart. It definitely has taken its course in our life to get us through moments. And we often say it all the time, like you gotta laugh to keep from crying. So it definitely does its job throughout life and it's important. And again, we don't really think about how important it is or maybe what it does take us through, but it definitely plays a vital part. Yasmin. Reflection question. So I was talking about this a little bit earlier in the first slide. Think about a time that you have literally laughed until your cheeks hurt, or until you've cried, until your belly muscles hurt, and how that makes you feel in those moments. Another thing that I think about often when we see something and it causes us to crack up, or if we see something that it causes us to like, oh my goodness, that was so funny. And I go back and try to tell the story, Yasmin, you can hit the next part too. But when I go back and try to tell the story or go back and try to think about it, we've relived the laughter, right? I feel like it's very important if we think about it as its own entity, then laughter has a memory. Think about if it was a time, and you stop right now to think about this. Think about a time where something just had you cracking up, right? And it was just so hilarious to you. And when you're in that moment, if you think about it now, you'll start to kind of smile a little bit. You may even chuckle a little bit because you're visualizing what it was, or you're remembering how it made you feel in that moment and you're reliving it. So remember to relive the laughter. Remember to allow laughter's memory to keep replaying in your life, and especially in moments when things aren't feeling that fun and funny and great. Go ahead and just take a moment when you're sitting at your desk and it seems like emails galore coming through, or it seems like you have a mountain in front of you that you can just not climb. Just sit back in your chair and think about something that had you cracking up or had you painstakingly, it was just painstakingly funny, and relive that moment and some of that. And it may not be as intense as it was the first time around, right? But it still has the power to kind of bring you out of that funk, bring you out of that mood, and allow you to kind of, vibe back with it again. So relive the laughter. Go ahead, Yasmin. Moving on to what to celebrate and how. This one is one of my favorite parts because it talks about how we have to be intentional about these moments and things in life. This section talks about to encourage positive focus and joy and family accomplishments and to help caregivers explore ways they can make family celebrations purposeful and meaningful. Yasmin. So let's talk about celebrating things. Why is it important to celebrate the small things? So let me pause there for a second. When we think about celebrations, we think about our typical things, right? Birthdays, Christmases, graduations, weddings, baby showers, things of that nature. The big things typically we think about. But let's take a moment here to think about the small things. Think about I went an entire week. I'm a big soda buff, right? And I try to do better with coming away from my Cokes and my Pepsis. So think about if you want to do it for yourself. Think about like if I can go a week with not hounding down 20 Cokes, right? That's an accomplishment for me. Celebrating that. If you're doing it with children, if Billy was struggling in math and he was keeping a very consistent low 60 grade and math. And once he reached a point where that comes up above a C or a C and above, taking a moment to celebrate that. It does not have to be that we're throwing Billy a big birthday, a big party, and we have balloons and clowns and things of that nature, but taking time to still celebrate it and creating things to celebrate and creating ways. Because the reality is another thing that we know the pandemic, if nothing else, has showed us this is that life is short and you never know what's going to happen. You never know what this roller coaster of life is going to look like. So sometimes we get caught up in the busyness and trying to say, well, Billy, you need to get this see it. Billy needs you this, Billy needs that. But let's take time to stop and celebrate Billy's small wins, right? Let's take time to stop and celebrate the fact that he was asking for more assistance when before he was too shy or ashamed to taking time to do those things. And it is a very important because what I'm saying is that a lot of times we focus on the negative. It's just us, it's human nature. If you're trying to recall a story or recall a person, most times we use negative things to recall it, right? We say, like, oh, yeah, remember, yeah, because it was that time when John fell down the steps, or it was that time when the rain was so bad it blew Susie's umbrella away, whatever. We pinpoint those things because that just somehow helps us to remember it better. We call that negativity bias. Again, it's nothing that we necessarily think to do. We're not necessarily being intentional about it. It's just who we are as humans. But taking time when we celebrate these small moments, that it helps us focus on the positives more and focus on the efforts and things that are made. It takes more effort to think about the positive and to focus on positive, but you end up with a better result in the end of it. So finding things in this list, if you want to, this is numbered to 5, and you can kind of keep paper off on your on the side yourself and actually do, because I have a activity a little bit later on where you can use a piece of paper or a scrap sticky note for. But if you want to kind of this is, and I love the fact that we're doing this in January because it's the beginning of a new year, and not that we're going to spend much time on New Year's resolutions, because who does that? But spending time on looking at the year to think about how we can take these things and make it purposeful in our life and be intentional about it. And so again, we have a whole year ahead of us. We can take these nuggets and put in our life. So that's why I was saying, if you want to write this down and say 5 things this year that I am going to be intentional on celebrating that are not things that I typically celebrate. So come up with 5 things, challenge yourself. So whether it be you as an adult, you as a mother, you as a wife, you as a caregiver, you as an employee, however you want to do it, 5 things, write down a list. And that list might take a little bit of time to develop, but write down 5 things that, like this year, I want to celebrate that. Once I reach this small goal or once this happens, let me celebrate it. Let me find a way to celebrate it. And that may look like simply going to dinner. It may look like calling your girlfriends up and say, hey, let's go. It may look like allowing Billy to have a friend over for the night and you all have popcorn and watch movies. It doesn't matter how you do it. It just matters that you do it. One thing I have learned with my children, we have two adult children, we have two preteens, and we have two youngers, two toddlers. Yeah, right. I don't know what we were thinking. But but one thing I have learned with all of my children and all of the ones that I've helped raise throughout the years is that it does not matter what you do with them as long as you're doing it with them. You can literally paint rocks. It would not matter to them. You can be making a paper airplane as long as you're sitting down and honed in on the moment and doing it with them. It makes a world of difference. When my children get, they hit marks and achievements, one of the things I do with them, I ask them, like, you tell me what it is that you want to do, right? What would be something that you would consider us celebrating this win? And a lot of times, surprisingly enough, they're like just sitting and like watching a movie with you, or me sitting to watch whatever they like to watch on YouTube, or just sitting down and doing family night with popcorn, or getting some snacks and just chilling out. They're not asking to say, Mom, can we go to the trampoline park? Can you go? Now, sometimes they do. Can you buy this and buy that? Especially my teenagers. But sometimes it's just the moment that you're creating with them, and that celebration enough. So don't get caught up thinking that it has to be something big and grandiose. Really, it can be small as long as you're doing it. Yasmin. So let's look at this. Some suggestions in making it special. Some of the suggestions in making it special: food, dress, activities, decorations, right? So I do a lot of events within a year. I couldn't even tell you. It would almost be embarrassing to say because it's too many. But I do a lot of events in a year. And one of the things that I have noted that people really enjoy, and I do all different age levels and groups and dynamics. One thing I know people enjoy is that you see at the bottom themes, things, things, and things. A good theme, adults, children, people love a good theme party. Somewhere where they can come dressed in a certain kind of color, a certain kind of theme, a certain kind of ideal or thought. The food is surrounded around that. The activities is surrounded around that. The decorations, we just appreciate it. I don't know if it's something that brings us back to our childhood, or, because when you're a kid, you have like all kind of little themed birthday parties and things of that nature. But it definitely has a draw in and of itself. But just a couple of things. Food, if you want to do like a potluck, if you want to do a bring your own food, Chinese style, if you want to do picnic, just some ideals of some things you can do. Maybe everyone comes and tries a new recipe together, or you want to take time to cook together, something like that. So food we already know it brings people together, right? It does its job. It makes us just kind of come together and fellowship and brings us into a good space. You get a good dish in front of you and you start eating and dancing. We kind of get all caught up in that. So food definitely, it does what it's supposed to do. Dress and attire. So whether, again, you see on there, it says costumes, being formal is a thing. It's a black tie, it's a all white this, it's a that, or whatever. Or even if it's like a PJ party for kids, they love that. Some of the activities, the top on the list is singing, dancing, and music. That is going to bring anyone out of any shell and bring anyone into a space of wanting to celebrate. So finding little things, family circle, games, telling stories, little campfire kind of activities, talent shows. And if you see at the very bottom of that activities list, it says puzzles and Play-Doh. The simplest thing I shared on Tuesday, that I did a big Valentine's event for a group of people, and literally I had adults in there, I had children, teenagers, I had seniors, 83-year-olds in there, different ones. And I took a little 50-cent cup of Play-Doh that I got from Walmart and I put it in front of them. And everyone was looking like, huh, what is this supposed to be about? And I gave them a certain amount of seconds and I would say, at the count of three, make your best heart. And then everyone would like, Harry, and you should have saw how everyone started scrambling and they got so into it. In my mind, I was only going to do like 2 rounds of that, right? Because who wants to sit and play Play-Doh? I think we literally played that game for about an hour or so. They wanted to go from round after round after round. So like what I'm saying, it does not have to be something big. And especially with the children, it does not have to be something big. Like I said, just do it. Same thing with the decorations and things. Dollar Tree is a gold mine for such things. It is a gold mine. They have all kinds of things. If anyone uses Dollar Tree, let me see a couple thumbs up on here. They're a gold mine with it 100%. So they are definitely good. And anywhere, your Walmarts, your Party Cities, wherever, whatever. But being able to bring it together, tie it all in together and make it something. So think about when you're doing your celebrations, like I said, whether they are big or small, think about these different suggestions and these different areas, aspects of the celebration and what that's going to look like for you. So that way that when you're planning it, and I think our next slide is talking about planning, but when you're planning it, you can have some of these checked down. And if anybody wants to use some of the slide or have some of these suggestions later on, just let us know. So that way we can make sure you get it. Go ahead, Yasmin. So planning to celebrate, right? We already know this, who, what, when, where, why, how. We know what that looks like. We learned that very early on. The reason why it's good to have it mapped out, written out, a lot of times I just keep it in my head, but the reason why it's good to have it mapped out and written out, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, is that way so that it can be very clear as to what actually is going to happen, who's in charge of what, when they're going to do it, how we're going to execute it. And again, even if it's a small movie night at home, is dad getting the popcorn? Who's bringing the seasonings for the popcorn? So on and so forth. So being intentional about your planning and making sure that this is important and we want to make sure that it's executed properly. We want to make sure that it happens. So the planning part, it all goes into you being intentional about doing it. Yasmin, don't forget to plan to savor, right? So a lot of times when we get the plan, especially if you're hosting and you're the one that's putting it together, like I said, if you've done like a kid's birthday party, you know it's mayhem, right? If you've done somebody's bridal party, a shower, a baby shower, it is complete mayhem. You're the one that's running around trying to get this here and that there and do all these little things. So it becomes a lot. I had a big sneaker ball at the end of the year last year, and I'm over here in the kitchen trying to make sure they're here. I'm trying to make sure the sound system is together and make sure this and that. And after the event was over, the next day I saw all kind of posts like, oh, we had such a great John, this all kind of posting things on Facebook. And I was like, I experienced a much different event than they experienced, right? Because I was the one running around trying to keep it all together, whereas my guests, which I'm glad were able to enjoy themselves. But my point is to say is that I did not plan to savor. I planned the food, I planned the music, I planned the decorations, but I didn't plan to savor because if I did, I would have been able to then capture it, grab it, and absorb it the way that everyone else did when they came. So I say that to say if the moment is supposed to celebrate something, if you're doing this with a purpose, then make sure the purpose is fulfilled because you planned it properly and you plan to make yourself a part of it, not as the person that's hosting and working it, but you plan to be able to sit down and relax with Billy as well, or sit down and enjoy it and do, the games or participate in the karaoke or participate in a movie, not you running around trying to still figure out what's going to happen. Again, like I said earlier, with life being short, we definitely have to make sure we grab these moments as best as we can and make sure we sit there in it for a while and enjoy it. If and that saying, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. If we are the ones, and not mama, but whomever the person is, if you're the one that's kind of stressed out because you're trying to get it all together, the people around you may not 100% enjoy it, especially if they're in tune with you. They may not be 100% able to enjoy it in its fullest capacity if you're stressed out. So get the corn dogs on the table, get the music going, get your whatever you're going to have, and then you sit down and just with everyone else as if you were just equally invited, you sit down and you enjoy it as well. But don't forget to plan to savor, and you have to plan to savor. Yasmin. Now, what we know is things happen, right? Anytime we're trying to plan something, anytime we're trying to do something, go somewhere. It starts off where you have a big list of this, that, whatever, or even attendees, or if you're going on a trip. And before you know it, when it gets down to that week, you have like one or two people that have stayed committed throughout the whole process. So things happen, right? Anytime you're trying to do something, things happen. So in this particular slide, we want to talk about what it looks like when things happen, right? So the previous slide was talking about the plans you made. Now let's make the plan B. If the food just does not show up, or if it comes late, or if somebody, whatever the case is, what is the backup plan for that? You know, what could happen? This first column says what could happen. Food could not come on time. Streamers start falling down all around us, or the electricity goes out, whatever. And then how that can change plans, and then what would you do, and who would do what? Putting those things in place, because again, it's important to take time to do the celebrate. And so we want to make sure it happens. We don't want to get to a point where things just start, problems come up, things start going wrong, and you're like, oh, just forget it. Yep, somebody said burn the food. Absolutely. And probably burn the food because we're doing 1,000 other things, right? And we forgot that it was in there. So definitely make it. You all can throw in the chat, give me some things. It pops up so I can see it. Some other things that could happen, some other things that can kind of go wrong that you didn't necessarily plan on. And then you're trying to, at the last minute, scramble and run around to try to fix it. So along with that whole planning side, make sure that we keep this in mind. Again, if you have to write it down, because things go on. It might rain if you were planning an outdoor party or outdoor gathering, and it might rain. What are you going to do? You know? So being able to say, okay, we're also planning to go, and we're going to be able to go inside in this space if it rains. Or only thing worse than trying to plan a wedding or something outside is if there's rain on the forecast, it will send you up into a tizzy. And that day of, you're like praying and hoping and wishing and praying that it does not rain after you've put all of that time and effort and money into it. So if it's something, again, no matter how big or small it is, if you're planning it, you want to make sure that it's able to happen. So definitely make your plan B, have a contingency plan in place so that way you can still enjoy the celebration, and whatever little hiccup or whatever little hitch happened, it's not enough to completely derail the whole entire thing. Yasmin. So tying it all together, we are going to talk about the experience of all, experience in all. I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with the concept or the thought or the ideal of experience in all, but let's talk about it. It says this should help us learn a new gratitude skill that evokes and savors the feeling of all. There's that savors word, that S word again, talking about savoring things, and all definitely ties that into it and brings that together in a sense of what I was talking about earlier with the planning and the parties and the gatherings and taking time to kind of soak it up like a sponge and grab into it. And this experience and all ties into all of that. So let's go into it. Yasmin. Gratitude, experience, and all. So let's talk about first what all is. How do we describe it? It's hard to describe and articulate feelings, right? Because what do you say? What words can really describe a feeling? We could try to pull some out of a hat, but sometimes it's still difficult for us to do. So being as though all is a feeling, let's try to define it as best as we can. All is described as emotion that arises in response to experiences that we perceive to be strikingly vast and changes the way we understand the world. That sounded like a lot of extra, right? What does that mean, Ms. J? Let's look at it. So imagine there's a time where, well, you know what? I'm going to jump to that in a second. Let me run to this real quick, and then we're going to do that part together. So let's see what researchers say about evoking a sense of awe. It has the ability to expand people's perception of time. So if you ever think about being in a moment of such that you would describe as a awe moment, like we just kind of sit back and you're like, wow, that's incredible. You do kind of get lost in the time there. You do kind of get lost in, I see somebody says reflecting on life and its joy. Absolutely. You kind of get lost in that moment because it's like you're just sitting there and you're just watching it, and time doesn't matter in that moment. everything around you kind of stands still, and the perception of time is like whatever. It also says it reduces feelings of impatience. I like to pop that right back to the time, because usually when we're busy, when we're trying to do things, we're all caught up in what it is we're trying to do, and we always are focused on the next thing, right? When you're working on something, even if it's at work, or if you're doing something for the family, or if you're knocking off your checklist on your day off, that you're trying to be productive, you're trying to get the laundry done, you're trying to get Billy's clothes out for the next day for school, you're trying to make cookies for the Valentine's Day party, whatever the thing is, you get worried about, okay, the next thing, the next thing. Imagine going to try to make a run to the store because you're trying to hurry up and get some last minute things, and the line is long, right? It's wrapped around the back of the store. What do? Either we walk in and see the long line and walk back out the store, that's me, or we stand there, we grab what we need, and then we probably kind of complain in our head, if not out loud, like, goodness gracious, they need to get another cashier here, or they need to do this, or they need to do that, right? So we get caught up in that moments. But when you are experiencing moments of awe, and where you're in a place to experience that, then time doesn't matter in that sense. And it does reduce the feelings of being impatient, because you're not thinking about the next thing. You're just enjoying where you're at in the space that you're in. Increases willingness to volunteer time and help other people. When we are able to grab hold to that sense of awe, when we're able to grab hold, it does make us feel good inside, right? It gives us a feeling of purpose and like, wow, and kind of like encourages us and strengthens us and makes you feel good about whatever the next thing. When we feel that way, we are more likely to then help other people, right? We're more likely to put our time into other people's pots, our energy into other people's pots, to then be able to help go over here and like, you know what, let me help you. Let me lend you a hand today. Or let me call and see what I can do in this campaign that's happening here, or with this event that's happening over there, and be able to be a part to help somebody else. So it does increase our willingness to do that, right? It also says it leads to a stronger preference for experiences over material products. All that's saying is that when we are focused more on the moments, the memories, the times, you're not really thinking about that cost this or this cost that. It's not so much that as it is you trying to grab hold of the moment. And again, looking for those all moments. So you're trying to create an experience. My husband often teases me because I'm always trying to create a memory, right? Create a moment. I'm always trying to do that with the kids' birthdays and gatherings. And he's like, you're doing all that, and these kids aren't even thinking about it. They're like, let me just go to the zoo, or let me just go to that. And I'm putting money out here and money out there trying to create this thing. And he was like, so the thing is, like, I'm getting caught up in all of that when they could care less, right? They're just like my baby. She's like, I just want to go to the zoo. And we live in a small town, and our zoo probably has majority of the animals that I can see in my backyard. But for her, it's a journey and it's experience, and she loves it. Where I'm like, let's go to the DC Zoo, and let's go here and let's go there and spend money on hotel and this and that. And she's just as content as walking through the deer, seeing the little ducks and the little prairie dogs or whatever it is that they have there. It doesn't matter to her. So in those moments like that, it's like I had to pull back and step down and say, you know what, we're going to the little zoo, and we're going to see the little birds and the monkeys and whatever else that she enjoys there. But it doesn't put as much emphasis on materialistic things. It does not put as much emphasis on trying to make sure that you spend this and spend that. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the whole celebrating portion and what we do. And when we're trying to celebrate, again, sometimes we think that the biggest things are the money that we spend and what we put into it financially, and all the stops that we make, when really, when you're just trying to have that experience, it is very much the small things that matter, right? It's the small things that kind of just give it its feel, and that usually allow us to experience that feeling of awe, versus I spent $150 over here and we're still looking like, okay, I could have did this at home, right? So that's what that section is talking about. And then lastly, and this kind of ties all of that in together, increases life satisfaction. Um, being able to just generally feel content and satisfied is something that I think we all have a hard time doing. It's something that we try to strive to as much as possible, like regardless of your circumstance, regardless of where you are in life, regardless of where you're trying to go or where you came from, just being able to be like, you know what, I'm pretty satisfied. You ever hear the doctors when they talk about eating and they say, don't eat until you're stuffed, just eat until you're satisfied, right? A lot of times we want to go because it's good. The food's good, right? Especially if you go to a good buffet and you're like, I want to go back and get this plate and that. Chances are we were probably satisfied after the first plate, but because there's so many other things that we still want to try, we go for it. I'm a big Captain George buff. So I'm like, if I go there, I'm trying to like not eat. I want to grab it all. They have like 4 bars there, 4 eating bars. So I want to hit them all, right? So chances are, again, I was satisfied after the first sample plate, but I'm like, hey, I'm here. I spent my $40. We're going to eat and I'm going to get it all in. So being able to just experience and have satisfaction and contentment in life, being able to allow your experiences of all to do that for you, it definitely does increase that. Um, so they conclude, the experts conclude that experiences of all bring people into the present moment. We just talked about that. And being in the present moment underlies all capacity to adjust time perception. We just talked about that, influence decisions, going into that whole volunteering and being intentional about helping people, and make life feel more satisfying than it would otherwise. When we, going back to that negativity bias, when we are only focused on what we don't have, where we want to be, where we're not, then we are not really able to be just satisfied in the moment, right? And we're not able to just be content in a moment because we're always thinking about something else. When we are in these moments of awe, they allow all of that to stop, like I said earlier, and you can just focus on just being satisfied right then and there. Like, this is good. This is a nice space. And I'm going to just allow myself to sit and enjoy it for a while, just sit and eat it up. Yasmin. So let's do this together. We have a 2-minute clock. So this says that what we're going to do is, well, before you start it, what we're going to do is we are going to take a moment, and now this is your job because I've talked plenty. This is your job. So we're going to take a moment to stop and think about the last time you have experienced all. The last time you feel like you've kind of been caught up in one of those moments and experiences of all. And it might take you a little bit of time to get those, grind those wheels are going to think about it. So take time to think about it and what it was for you. So it could be, you were just home and just chilling and just like feeling blessed for what you had around you. You could have been driving on the open road and looked over and saw like some deers and their little deer babies, and the sunset was just right, and the trees were blowing just right, and you just sat back and said, wow, this is amazing. Whatever that moment is. I will share personally, and I told the group this Tuesday, but I'll share personally. So my husband and I, again, like I said, we have 4 children, but before we were able to conceive our first, we lost 4, right? We buried 4 babies. So my sometimes your experience in life, right, they can alter your moments of awe and when you have those moments. So because of those unfortunate experiences in life, when we were able to finally conceive and have now 4 more that we've gathered along, we were able to have those. My experiences have all come typically on a weekly basis, and they look like this. If we're sitting in a room and we have 4 still in the home because the other 2 are grown, and we're sitting in a room and we're doing movie night or watching Jungle Book or Lion King or whatever, switched at birth or whatever it is. And we're watching one of our shows. The kids are laid up on the bed with my husband and I, and somebody's drinking on one of my Cokes or one of my Pepsis, and then someone's eating Doritos, and my husband and I are sitting here at the head of the bed, and we're just sitting back watching our babies, right? Though that is my experience of all, just sitting back thinking because of what I experienced before. It takes me back in a moment to think about what I lost and then where we are now, and that I have these, and sometimes they work me 100%. But in that moment, it stops, right? I don't hear the TV. I don't hear them bickering, or I don't hear them smacking on the Doritos, or I don't see them drinking my soda, but I'm just wrapped up in that moment of like, wow, like these are our babies and this is where we are. And this is, we're living in an answered prayer or whatever you want to call it. So my moments have all come a little bit more often because I live with my alls. But that kind of evokes that for me. And it also then puts you again in the space of gratitude, right? That's the word you see above, right before experience and all. It puts you in a grateful space to be able to then say, wow, this is awesome. So that looks different for everyone. So take 2 minutes and think about it in your head first. And then the next thing we'll do, we'll jump into that part and I'll tell you why it's important later on. But I'll give you 2 minutes on the clock. Yasmin, you can hit it and think about what that looks like for you the last time you experienced it. And I'm going to stop talking so you can think. And if you want to share and put it in the chat, by all means, I would love to see it. All right. And I see a few things in the chat. I'm going to read a couple of the ones I see. I see someone says, my moment was riding up the road to my house after the snowfall. It was such a beautiful scene. It looked so peaceful and it filled my heart with gratitude. That's awesome. Snowfall is so beautiful. We live out in the middle of the woods. So when you see it like resting on the trees and like open areas, it is absolutely beautiful. I see someone else agreed with the looking at the snow when it was snowing, and also an all moment for me is it seems to relax me absolutely. And I do hear people say that quite a bit, like rain and snow and sometimes thunderstorms seem to be relaxed. And I'm not sure about the thunderstorm part. Um, my all moment is watching my grandchildren being raised by their parents. That is absolutely an all moment, and it's a big appreciation moment. Um, I told someone the other day that one of my all moments is hearing my daughter get on my grandkids about things that we once said to her. I thought that's a big all moment. Like when you start sounding like me, I appreciate those moments. Absolutely. My 10-year-old made me go out on the deck in the snow to see the sunset, and it was so gorgeous and peaceful. Was grateful to be able to share that moment with him. That's awesome. I love it. I see a lot of nature ones. I love it. Photo memories on social media. Yes, driving and taking in the scenery and reflecting on growth of self and my kids. Facebook, social media will definitely take you down great memory lanes, let you see where you were, the littles, how they grow up, and all of that. So 100%. It's definitely good for that. The last one I see, it says my most recent is when I visited Vanderbilt Summit in New York for Christmas Eve, and it was an experience that leaves you in awe. I can only imagine You are 99 floors up. Oh, it jumped on me. You're 99 floors up and you can see New York and New York, New Jersey, nothing but glass and other. Look, just whoever wrote this, the way you are describing it, it allows us to get a visual of what you experience and see it. So now you have invoked a spirit of, I mean, a spirit, invoked a moment of awe for us. Absolutely. A lot of nature, a lot of scenery, a lot of children, all of that. It makes you kind of get into that and feel. And I think, again, while you're trying to write it in and while you're putting it in the chat, you can kind of feel some of that again and have an appreciation for it. Yasmin, this next exercise, and you all have, some of you all have already done it. The reason why I said I want you to do this portion is because I feel like it'd be beneficial later. So this part says to depict what that experience of all was, right? If you're writing it down, like I said, some of you have already put it in the chat. If you want to write it down on your notebook next to you, if you are artistically inclined, you can go ahead and kind of sketch it out however you want to. And I'll tell you in a little bit why I feel like it's important to really hone in on this part here. It's 5 minutes on the clock. I probably won't give the whole entire 5 minutes just for time's sake, but I do want to take a moment for us to do that, even if it's just writing down what the words are that you feel in that moment. Peaceful, serenity, this, that, relax. Take a couple of minutes to do that. Okay. Can you hear me? Yep, you can hear me. So the reason why I wanted us to take a moment to do that and the why I feel like that is important is because of this. There's times, and I alluded to this earlier, there are times in life where sometimes things aren't pretty, right? There are times in life we have moments where we get super frustrated. We have moments where we don't really feel like all anything. We don't really feel like humor. We don't feel like family fun or any of the sort. So the reason why I wanted us, and if you didn't do it, maybe take time when you have what we call the fairy tale of downtime, which is extinct in my life. But when you have downtime, take the time to be intentional about doing that and writing it down. And for this reason, when we get into one of those spots where it's just kind of like a funky thing, again, maybe things just aren't going great or whatever the case is, you can go back and reflect on this. I think someone said earlier about social media and the memories that kind of pop up. This kind of acts as that. You can take time to go back into this paper, to this sketch, to these list of words that you just wrote out when you had experience of all, or if you want to jump back to our first about laughter, when you just laughed until your gut hurt, take time to document it because when you have moments where things are not great, you can go back and read it. You can go back and look at it. You can go back and look at the sketch and maybe relive some of that, and kind of bring us up and out of where we are and bring us away from that moment of not feeling great. So definitely, however you take time to depict it, even if it's you just going back to look at pictures of when you experienced that moment or a picture around it, definitely take time to do that. Yasmin. So reflection, let's look at it. And I've already done a lot of this, but I'm going to pose these two questions and they can be posed as a challenge to you. How could you incorporate intentional? I know you all have heard me say that word at least a million times since we've been on this Zoom. How can you incorporate intentional experiences of awe in your own life, right? And then how can you promote experience of awe in the lives of others around you? So think about that. Think and number two is what I'm doing now, right? I'm introducing the thought and the ideal to some of you all and reminding you others who already know about it. And then now I'm challenging you. How can you find a way to promote that in other people's lives, your children's lives, your coworkers' lives, your family's lives, your mother's, father's, siblings, whomever? Because if we have when we experience that, if we really value it and appreciate it, and I've read some of the things that you all have written, and I'm sure it felt very good in those moments, the way you all have used words to describe it, it felt good in those moments. So if we value how good it felt to us, let's find a way to then pay it forward. Let's find a way to try to help promote that in someone else's life. If you see Jess on your job or Angie, and she's like, oh, for the love of God, this is a mess, and I don't want to deal with this and this and that. Like, Angie, let's look at some all moments here, and take time to find a way to do that. So definitely wanting to find ways to evoke it in other people's lives, and especially then, of course, our own, but then other people. And sometimes we don't want to be greedy and just experience all the goodness and not find ways of doing it and become a part of someone else's all moment, right? Become a part of someone else's their moment of satisfaction. Yasmin. So final thoughts in closing. Number one, there's that word again, be intentional. You can pop through them all, Yasmin. Do not wait. So, and this is, I love this. I say, do not wait for the moments to find you, right? Don't wait for the moments on the calendar that pop up. Don't wait for them to find you. You create them. You find them. That list in the beginning where it said the 5 things, and I said you kind of put to celebrate them. Look at it, January. My challenge is to you, put those 5 things out there. You create them. Don't wait for them to find you, because sometimes they just never will. And even if it's a calendar year of something that you celebrate, it still may not always go the way you intended. So you create them, you find them, and you do what it is that you need it to happen. Number two, again, these are 3 thoughts that I want you all, if you don't remember anything else I said. Number 2 says, savor the moment. We talked about that, right? Allow the moment to do what it's intended to do. What is the point of celebrating if we don't feel like we're celebrating, if we feel more stressed? So allow it to do what it's intended to do. And the last one is think yourself happy. So again, like I was saying earlier about that moment, I think there's one more clip, Yasmin. Think yourself happy. So in the moment when you are feeling this, that, whatever, if you need to put the paper on your desk, if you need to put the affirmation, the memory, the moment, the picture, wherever around you, put it in your pocket, your wallet, tuck it away wherever on your person you need to, but think yourself happy. Positive thoughts have the power to diffuse and de-escalate. So sometimes when we are kind of caught up in that and the bomb is about to go off, take the time, you know how they do on the shows, and they start playing with the blue wire and the red wire. Do that in your own life. Diffuse it. Allow those moments. Think about that silly show that you watched or that crazy TikTok that had you cracking up and it was so stupid funny, but it was just funny. Think about that. And I promise you, if you do, look, I see some of you all smiling already. If you think about it, it will cause you to relive it. It'll cause you to chuckle within your own self a little bit, and people around me like, what in the world are you laughing about? And you're like, don't worry about it. I'm thinking myself happy. And allow it to help de-escalate if you already are heightened. And sometimes when we get heightened, you'll see a kid or somebody do something silly, and then you just bring yourself down because you start laughing and you're like, okay. And it kind of brings it all in. So those are my final thoughts. Be intentional, savor the moment, and think yourself happy. Yasmin. And I do want to take time, that is the end of my presentation. I do want to take time to talk about a little bit of my 3 minutes I have left to talk about our Maryland Respite program. A lot of times people know Children's Choice for foster care, but not very much with respite. And as they said, Mackenzie said before, I am the respite worker And for Children's Choice, Respite is a program that is designed as a prevention program. The children that are in our respite program or that makes you eligible for respite program is children do have, and she's going to put our respite link into the chat so you all can go to it. If you have more questions, you can always let us know. But they're children that are receiving mental health counseling, therapy. Some of them are medicated, things of that nature, but it gives the caregivers, the aunts, the uncles, the grandmoms, the moms, the great aunts, the stepmoms, opportunity to just be able to have a rest and break from sometimes the child's behaviors, their challenges, and things of that nature. It also gives the child a break from home stressors, triggers, things of that nature. So we have licensed homes with us with Children's Choice, and they go and they just engulf into whatever that family becomes. You go on trips with them, you go to dinner with them, you do everything that however you would. I often talk to my providers and my families when I'm doing intakes and meet and greets about consider it like going to grandmom's house, or consider it about going to godmom's house or auntie's house. I'm the fun auntie in my family, by the way. So consider it going to fun auntie's house or whatever. So being able to give them opportunities, I need respite, okay? We all need a break, right? From life and what that looks like. So that's what this respite program is designed for. That is the way it's set up. The only criteria the children have to have, number one, like I said, they do have to have a mental health provider. Those are typically who refers them to our program. We do have a referral process, refers them there. And then at some point, you're going to run across Miss J at that point. And then, of course, they have to have Medicaid and all of that. If you are interested, know anyone's interested, tell them about us, call us. You have questions. I always tell people, call me, text me, Morse code me, however you need to reach me, and we'll definitely be able to answer the questions as best as possible. I thank you all for your time today. I thank you all for your participation, your nods, your smiles, your grins. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today. And if Yasmin, Mackenzie, whomever, if you can put all our information, my contact information in our box, that would be great as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, Miss J. You gave us some really great tips today. We want to thank all of you for joining us today. You will receive an email with a link to the recording of the presentation, as well as a survey asking for your feedback on how we can continually improve these webinars and bring these topics to you. Join us for next month's webinar, Understanding Healthy and Unhealthy Relationship Behaviors. That will be held on February the 15th at 11:30. We also want to take a moment to invite all of you to become champions for the 2024 Children's Mental Health Matters campaign. You can learn more about what it means to be a champion and to advocate for the mental well-being of children in your communities. And we are putting all this information in the chat as well. And finally, if you have any questions for us here at the Mental Health Association of Maryland, you can reach out to us at info@cmhm.mhamd.org. That's a mouthful. Alrighty, so thank you again, Ms. J, and thank you to all of you, and enjoy the rest of your day and have a safe weekend. See you next month.